And gentlemen, welcome to episode number 27 of Material Issues. Here we go again, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Mark Hershberger of Pop Detective Records. As always, I'm joined by my very good friend, the man himself, the king of the International Pop Overthrow Festival, which is back on track, Mr. David Bash. David, good evening.
Good evening, Mark. Very glad to be here for episode 27. And as you mentioned, IPO is very much back on track. We just finished IPO in New York at Arlene's Grocery.
Nice.
And it went really, really well. I mean, beyond even my most optimistic expectations. Arlene's is a top-notch venue. We had done IPO there from 01 through 04, not the whole thing, but shows on and off. Really had a good time, and we're glad to be back. And we did the whole thing there, and like I said, they were on. Everybody was on. The sound engineers were amazing. The whole staff was just spot on, pro, and the bands were tremendous, and the crowds were really good. Mm-hmm. Everyone was enthusiastic. You could tell that a lot of people hadn't been to anything since before the pandemic. A lot of the bands hadn't done any shows since before the pandemic. So I think hey, Andy.
Hey, Andy.
Glad to have you back. So I think it was a combination of joy and relief. Relief on the band's part that they actually, would be able to do a good show. I mean, they hadn't done anything for 2 years. People were feeling good. They were checking for vaccines at the door, for vaccination. So people felt secure at the door. At the door, you had to show proof, or you weren't getting in. That's the way it's going to be in Boston this weekend, and the way it'll be in Hamilton, Ontario, the following weekend. Right. And I think that put a lot of people's minds at ease. I really did. And
you're in Brooklyn, New York right now, so you're on the East Coast, staying with a good friend,
home of Dave Boogeyman. Yes,
Dave the Boogeyman of Radio New York International, and great guy.
I want to thank him very much. Want to thank him very much for his hospitality. Oh, thank you, Andy. Yeah. I remember Andy commented as IPO was happening how good the sound was. The room did sound very good, and I have a different camera than I used to, so I'm sure that helped. But yeah, I mean, everything about Arlene's Grocery for the kind of venue it is, a rock club that holds maybe about 100 people. Everything about it was just perfect. So, and they were happy. They were happy too. The best part is they want us back, and we're very happy. We're going to be very happy to be back next year.
It's an awesome venue, and you got lucky because you're right there near Katz's Deli, and I can almost smell the turkey and the corned beef through the screen right here.
Of course, we did go,
and
we had to wait 20 minutes to get in. It's amazing just how popular that place has become. It always was, but in the past few years, you can't go there without a line. And then once you get in, you have to wait in line to get your sandwich, which you order straight. You order straight from the counter. You've got the cutter there. You tell them what you want,
and don't lose your ticket.
Don't lose your exactly. And they give you whatever meat that you order. They give you some pieces to taste while they're making the sandwich. And it was,
my heart.
I know, really. Well, when I come back here next week, maybe find someone to watch the dogs and come on up.
Come on up.
That's my treat.
Oh, nice. Well, I'm there.
All right, there you go.
Well, my friend, we've got a fantastic show this evening. Not only for a lot of hardcore power pop fans, especially from the late 70s, but it's near and dear to my heart because it's a band and an album that I wore out, and I heard about, or not really heard about, but I was perusing Record Revolution in Reading, Pennsylvania in the early in early 1980, and I was the kind of person that would go A to Z and just start flipping and looking for stuff. And I came up to the H's, and for some reason, here was this album called The Headboys. I hadn't heard of the Headboys because this was pre-internet for all the you youngsters out there. We used to get our information from magazines like Cream and Hit Parader and Rolling Stone, and and maybe you read about it in a newspaper or something somewhere. So our internet was flipping A to Z. And when I came upon this album, it had this big, it almost looked like a face. It was a circle, and these guys were laying around the circle, and it said the Headboys. And I looked at the front, looked at the back, and I said, well, I gotta take this home. This was too cool. And immediately fell in love with the album, wore the sucker out. Everybody who knows anything about power pop is familiar with the song, The Shape of Things to Come. And as I was wont to do after that album for the next couple of years, I kept looking for album number 2 from the Headboys, and it never arrived. And you would check with the...
It's only apropos, Mark, because from what I understand, the girls used to nickname you the Headboy. So
yes, exactly. But ladies and gentlemen, if you've ever wondered what happened to the marvelous band, the Headboys, what was their story? It's all a mystery. Tonight, it is going to be answered because our very special guest is one of the Headboys himself, one of the main songwriters. I'd like to introduce you right now to Headboy George Boyter. And there it is. There is the album.
And I bet that's a UK pressing too. I need that.
David needs that UK pressing, George. Andy says he listened to the album today. Well, great stuff. Fantastic. George, how the heck are you?
Well, I'm going to raise a glass of finest malt whiskey to you two guys for having me on the show, and Chink, and to anyone who's listening, anyone who's been a fan, and I know there are a few out there.
Yes, indeed. Definitely. Yes, indeed. Here's to you, my friend. Cheers. You have been well, my friend?
I'm fine, yeah.
You look great. You look great. You still sound like George Boyter of the Headboys. Now, many times when we have guests on here, we've learned that we need to start off with some of the latest music they've released because it takes up all of our time if we start off the beginning, and then by the time we get to the end, we don't have time to talk about latest projects. But there hasn't been a Headboys project since 1979, so we're going to go back to our original way of doing things, and we'd like to talk to you about how you started as a youngster, what floated your boat music-wise, and how did you get into music? Was it from your household, your parents, that kind of thing? So, George, talk to us a little bit about your youth.
Well, I can remember the very first song that I ever listened to. It was a wind-up 78 that we'd borrowed from somebody, and it was Gene Autry.
Oh, okay.
Gene Autry singing Old Faithful, and I listened to this over and over again. and then you know, when I made friends at school, my best friend, he had an older brother, and I think this is quite a common story for people. Richard, my best friend, had an older brother, and we used to sneak into his bedroom, which was up in the attic, and listen to his Buddy Holly EP.
Okay. All right.
So many people started with Buddy, didn't they?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
What would we do without Buddy Holly? And he's still one of my biggest favorites to listen to anytime, because he sounds like he's singing in the next room, and it was only yesterday.
Yeah, indeed. Now,
so your brother got the attic, kind of like on the Brady Bunch. When Greg got the attic, you may not even know what I'm talking about.
Did you have formal training as a youngster, George? How did your musical abilities come about?
Okay, well, this friend that I've just mentioned, Richard, who I'm still big friends with, but he got a guitar for his 14th birthday, and so I started saving up to get a guitar as well, which I eventually did, and we learned guitar together. Really, he became really good, and I just stuck where I was and decided I only learn guitar enough to write songs, because that's what I was really interested in. I didn't like the idea of necessarily being up on stage. It was a creative act. You needed to play guitar at that time to do anything creative musically, because everything was happening. I was very fortunate to be at the age I was just as the Beatles broke, you know.
Mm-hmm. And that, well, not to give away George's age here, but in 1964.
Well old. So the Beatles were a huge influence, of course.
Yeah, indeed. And you grew up outside of Edinburgh.
Yeah, a little fishing village in Fife. And when we went to school, there was no music at school that you could speak of, but we started a folk club because right about that time there was a big folk movement in the UK, and that's when, in fact, Bob Dylan came over. He made quite an impact in Great Britain, I know, but. Right. But Dylan came over, and that created a huge boom in folk music. So I got into folk music for a while, because that meant we had 3 chords and a minor, maybe sometimes, but you could play anything, all these folk songs, you know.
Right.
So that got me up on stage, and the folk music carried me along for maybe a couple of years. But then, funnily enough, we came across the Incredible String Band, and they just blew my mind.
Yes, yeah.
they took over.
Were you a fan?
Yeah, David.
Were you a fan of Fairport Convention? To me, they're one of the greatest folk rock bands ever.
Absolutely. Fairport Convention are incredible. In fact, I'll tell you a story, David. We took a tape down to, this is another friend of mine who we started writing songs together. Andrew and I went down with a tape of songs we'd written and burst into Witch Season's production company, which was with Joe Boyd, ran Witch Seasons, and he was the manager of the Incredible Band and Fairport Convention. And Joe, who was American, as you know, took pity on us. He bought us lunch because we were bedraggled. We hitchhiked down on the fish lorry from Fife all the way to London. So we arrived smelling of fish and with our tape, and Joe had the good sense not to listen to it with us in the room. I do remember Nick Drake walked just behind us and said hello to Joe, who he obviously had a meeting with. And that evening, Joe said, "Why don't you two guys?" Because he knew we didn't even have a place to sleep. We were going to sleep in Parliament Square outside the House of Commons. and Joe said, come down to this place, Sound Techniques it was, in Chelsea. We've got a session on there, so just come along. And it was a very, generous thing that he did. He understood we were just waifs, and he was going to make sure that we were inside for the night. So we went down to Sound Techniques, met John Wood, and it was a session for Fairport Convention. And that was the full house session.
Okay.
That's the album Full House. Richard Thompson had just left, Dave Swarbrick had just joined, and Dave Mattix. And so we sat in the control room. We, whilst they waited for the band to come back from the pub, because they like to drink a bit of beer. and
Sandy Denny, certainly.
And they were really, they were well oiled and got into the studio. But the band were just great with us. We were just little kids. And I always remember that. No Sandy Denny, obviously, no Richard Thompson. But I tell you who you have in New York now that I think is a fantastic artist is Teddy Thompson. You ever been to see Teddy Thompson?
No.
He's Richard Thompson's son.
Okay.
He's got a fantastic voice, brilliant songwriter. And I think he lives in New York.
I'm going to have to check that out. I did not know that. I think it's interesting in that musicians or bands or artists of a certain age. We had Tot Taylor on here a few weeks ago, and it's funny how they talk about, well, we took a tape and we just went down to London and we went into the offices and they took good care of us. I mean, nowadays, obviously, there's not the labels everywhere and the big things but imagine just having artists right now of a young age just walking into Capitol Records saying, here's my tape, and oh, hey guys, are you hungry? We'll put you, make sure. No, I mean, it's amazing to me.
They wouldn't get past the concierge.
Exactly. But back in the day,
they wouldn't get past the concierge. No.
We've heard these stories quite a lot, David, haven't we? Where it's like, well, we went down to wherever it was and we went in and we just gave them a tape and they sat and said, well, listen, the difference in the time period and what music really was as to what it is now and how people could get noticed is amazingly different. But I love the stories. I love the stories. And you said that the folk music got you on stage for the first time?
Tell us how the Headboys formed.
Okay, well, after that sojourn down south in this kind of incredible band method, I went to art college then after that, and met musicians up there and listened to a band called the Cows, and I thought they were brilliant. But that night they broke up, and I thought the guitarist was just the best guitarist I'd ever heard. In fact, I still do think he's the best guitarist I ever heard, because that was Lou Lewis, who was in the Headboys. And so I spoke to Lou, and from the ashes of this band that had broken up, they were going to start another band. And I said, can I be in the band? And they said, what do you play? And I said, bass guitar. And I'd never touched a bass guitar in my life. So they said, okay. So I quickly bought a bass guitar and started learning. And we started a band called The Seconds. We did, we wrote some songs together, and once again, we got in a transit van and drove down to London, but we didn't get anything. That band then broke up, as bands always do. But Lou and I had forged something special between us in terms of both friendship and songwriting. We had all the same influences, and he and I we used to get together and just write songs. And then we decided we'd take our songs down to a publishing company, EMI, and they gave us, encouraging feedback, said, yeah, write some more and then bring them back, see if you can record them a bit better. So we went and did as we were told, and we wrote more songs. We needed to find a recording studio to record these and do a decent job. So we found this one in Edinburgh called Castle Sound Studios.
Okay.
And the guy behind the desk was our age, Callum. And Callum was not only a fantastic engineer, but we discovered in playing our songs, that he could play piano. He couldn't just play piano. He's brilliant on piano. He had a classical training. And then he said, if you want, we could get a drummer in. And then he invited Davey in. And so that was the core of the Headboys. But we started out as a kind of pop band. And we were called Badger. We were signed to MCA. And we did two singles. One was called Biding My Time. And then the second one, they took us down to Abbey Road, and we recorded in Abbey Road.
Wow.
with an orchestra. Can you believe it? And we thought, this is it. Hey, boys, we've made it. And that was the very same month that the Sex Pistols played at the 100 Club in Oxford Street. And anything, that happened before then was just rubbish. So Lou and I went back up to Scotland and thought, we got to change. We have got to change. So we started writing furiously in a more up tempo. We used the energy of new wave, but of punk, but we were too musically adept to just stick to thrashing the guitar. So it was called new wave. But we wrote, and we used all the downtime in Callum's studio, and we all wrote together as a band. I mean, Lou and I would come up with the kind of hook, and I would tend to do a bit more on the lyric side, and then we'd put the whole thing together, and that became the Headboys.
So why? When did you change then? What made you think we got to change from Badger?
Yeah,
to,
I wanted to ask. Can you guys hear me? I had to switch to a different device.
You sound and look better now.
I'm barely hearing you for some reason.
Okay.
It might have to do with my phone, but George, I don't know. You probably knew at the time there had been a band called Badger that Tony Kaye of Yes had formed.
No, I didn't.
You never knew that, so that had nothing to do with the name change whatsoever, huh?
We didn't choose the name. MCA gave it to us.
Ah, okay. All right.
So obviously they didn't know.
Yeah. It was a rubbish name, you know.
There's been a few Badgers since then have come and gone. Yeah. So who made the decision on the name the Headboys? Where did that come from?
An extremely good question, Mark, and I have no idea where we got that name from.
Weren't the Headboys a gang of ruffians?
No, not that I know of.
Okay, I'd read something about that. But.
Well, we at that time, just every song that came on the radio was now like a punk song, and one of them was Tom Robinson singing 2468 Motorway.
Yeah, and
we thought that was brilliant, so we wrote a song to that beat and same kind of general attitude. But Callum at the time, I'm not sure you can get away with this now, but his girlfriend was a schoolgirl. And she used to come round to the studio in her lunch hour in school uniform. So for Callum, Lou and I wrote Schoolgirls and recorded it. And that's where I think the idea for calling ourselves the Headboys came from. It was just that one song, you know. And funny enough, in the early days, Lou and I wrote for Callum. He was our inspiration because he was so of another world. He'd never, when we met him first, he'd never heard of Ray Charles, or he didn't know who Chuck Berry was, and he'd never heard of Buddy Holly. He'd only just heard of the Rolling Stones. In a way, that's what made his piano parts different,
Right, indeed. So the Headboys are now formed, and you and Lou, the whole band are writing material. How does this material turn into a major label debut on a label like RSO?
Yeah. Okay. Well, we did a pretty big, demo tape of about 10 songs, I think, and EMI Publishing, because Lou and I had signed a publishing contract with EMI Publishing. They then, I think they helped us to find a manager, and then the manager went round the record companies. And to tell you the truth, we had all the big ones came up to Edinburgh to talk to us and try and get our signature. Frankly, I think it went to our heads, We didn't handle it well. We were just arrogant shits. Scottish arrogant shit. So they couldn't even understand us, But no, we had Warner, we had Morris Oberstein from Warner's, David Kirschenbaum from A&M. I can't remember who it was from EMI, and then RSO got involved in it, and we picked the wrong record company. We picked RSO, and we should have gone with A&M. I mean, there's no question that was a massive mistake, because A&M were a proper, music label. RSO were not.
Right.
And we never met Robert Stigwood. It was just they put a big load of money down, and we just didn't know what to do, and the advice we got was go with RSO. But I think that
was it because of the Bee Gees at all? that you got that advice?
No, it wasn't because of the Bee Gees. No, I think well, there was all kind of rumors that we were a tax loss. We were signed as a tax loss. How's that for
Oh, Lord.
You can believe those things. There's
Sure.
like conspiracy theories. Anyway, it never felt like a record company. But we were there, and what we had to do then was get fit for the road, and we'd only ever played in the studio, So we were sent out on the road. We did a Scottish tour starting at Culloden. That's where the battle, symbolically, Scotland was lost. Scotland lost to the English at Culloden. And I think there's maybe some portent in that. Anyway, when we started playing live, we were terrible. And then we started playing. We did some dates in England. We started to get better, and then they sent us off to tour in Europe. Well, the album was ready for release. Anyway, we really got our act together in Europe and came back a pretty good live band.
Now, was this while the first single was out, or was the single not out yet when you were doing this?
No, the single was out.
All right, that was Shape of Things to Come.
Yeah, it's what really that song got us together as a band, because it really worked live, and we got our identity when we played Shape of Things to Come live. It was a live number. We wrote it live almost in a rehearsal studio. It came together as a bit of a jam, but with no words. And then I came up with some words after I fell asleep in the van in transit somewhere. I remember I just wrote it all down, and it just came out to the phonetic sounds of the music. So it really worked. And when we played it live, it was obvious. Hey, this is our song. It was an anthem.
And it has one of the cool hooks to it when you've got the whoa. I mean, that's like you said, it's an anthem. People remember that little snippet right there before the Shape of Things to Come, and that's what everybody can cling to, and that's what makes it a very special track. A very special track.
Yeah, it's not even words, is it? It's just
it doesn't have to be. Yeah, it's just And so you were the lyrics. You were the lyrics behind it. The music was a band oriented, or was that
we did it all together.
Okay, all right. And so that single I think came out in September of '79.
Bang on, yeah.
Bang on.
We
okay.
Often toured, and when we came back, that was the bombshell, because we'd got our act together on the road. We'd gone down really well. Oh yeah, we supported Wishbone Ash.
Oh, okay.
So we were playing support in big stadiums and at times, And then we had a few gigs on our own at the end, where we had to. Well, really, we could tell we had the audience going. We're very popular in Germany, and so we came back, and there was going to be a pause, get some more writing and recording done, and then Callum said he didn't want to tour anymore. That was the bombshell, and he had decided to leave the band. Well, we were completely and utterly poleaxed by that, but in retrospect, I understand. His father had invested in the building of the studio and all the equipment, and he couldn't have that completely abandoned with his son going off.
Right. Yeah.
But also, Callum didn't like life on the road, and so you can't force somebody to do something they don't like. So
now the album was already recorded though with Callum doing all the parts and things. The album was in the can, and it was there, but it was during this time where he was like, okay, but I don't want to be on the road. Yeah. So at least you had the album recorded, but this is crucial because you're just getting speed. You get up to steam. You're getting you're getting the fans, you're getting everything, and all of a sudden, a quarter of the.
Yeah.
It's like George Harrison saying, right after the Ed Sullivan Show, I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's like, what? That type of a thing. So so how did you carry on? What?
Well, the music scene at that time in England was moving incredibly quickly, and while we'd been off in Europe touring with Wishbone Ash, we came back and ska happened. Blue Beat.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, New Wave, I think, really morphed into something called the New Romantics, Duran Duran and Gary Newman. Electronic stuff came in. And we thought, crikey, have we missed the boat here? And we had to get a new keyboard player in who was brilliant. Bob Heatley is a great songwriter. I mean, Bob has had, subsequently after the Headboys, he's had 2 number-1 hits. He's written 2 number-1 hits of his own. But Callum had left, so we didn't have the studio to work in anymore. That was our place. That was our creative center. Right.
Yeah.
And our best times, I still think the time in the studio was the most fulfilling creatively.
But now you're at the album though. I want to get it was produced by Peter Kerr, who was known for doing at the time the Motors, which led to Bram Tchaikovsky, and in the same era, that's when Girl of My Dreams was out. That was right in the same time as what you guys were doing. So thoughts on Peter Kerr and being produced by him? Is that
Well, Pete was a lovely guy, and we demoed all these songs, and it was RSO who said, "No, we got to get a producer in and do the album." So we thought, well, what's the producer going to add? What Pete did was he made it all faster. He said, well, "I like your stuff, guys. Just play it a bit faster." And having come back from touring, we were able to do that, and in some cases, I think a couple of songs were too fast.
Okay.
But it was that energy that he wanted. And, he wasn't wrong, but he didn't have much to do, frankly, Pete. We just had to play it faster.
Right. Take exactly what you're doing and just he could have just sped the tape up a little bit. The voices would have went higher, but
I think he did a bit of that,
Oh, real quick, David Bash apologizes. His connection died. So right now it's just you and I carrying on, which is absolutely fine. So we're still talking Headboys and it's great, but he just texted me and because he's in Brooklyn, which is not his familiar area, and maybe the connection just died on him, but he sends his apologies and that kind of thing. No problem. But so I mean, Shape of Things to Come hit number 45, I think, on the UK charts and broke into the high 60s in the US. What was the thinking then? Were they following that up with another single before the album came out, or did the album come out first before they followed up with something?
We were booked to go on a flight to America, and that was when Callum. It was at the same time that Callum said, "It's all over. I'm not going to tour anymore." And so, 2 things happened. RSO pointed out that in the terms of the contract, if one of the band members left, the contract was null and void. And they chose to say, okay, we just, you're out of contract. And I think they probably thought, hey, this new wave thing's passed. There's something new now, and these guys aren't the new stuff. They're the old stuff. So we didn't, so we were out there, we didn't have a record contract, and they cancelled the flights to America, which is, very disappointing.
Was RSO surprised that you even hit 45 in the UK charts, or were they disappointed that it didn't do better? Because it doesn't seem like they were behind you that much in the beginning, in the first place. So
no, I don't think they were. I honestly don't think they were. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't know why they signed us if that was the case, you know.
But I mean, number 45 is nothing to sniff at, and you did get on top of the pops, and you know you had a little bit of momentum. So you know, you never know with this business, obviously, and what makes labels push harder and what doesn't. But you know, it's just an interesting story that you came out of the gate, and as you said, a lot of it's timing. You know, the punk came in, and then you're on the verge of the new romantic and that kind of thing, and you were kind of stuck somewhere in the middle on a label that didn't really know what to do with your kind of music.
That's a very good summation, Mark.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy, but you had the UK release, and then you also had a US release, in the States, which is what my copy of the album was. Shape of Things to Come, I played that to death, and of course everybody, and that's been on some new wave soundtrack and compilation type things over the years, so it does have some staying power in the power pop kind of. But I'll tell you what, I don't know what you think of a lot of the other songs on the album, but I remember specifically, I couldn't stop playing Kicking the Cans. I just loved that cowbell drum, you know, boom, boom. This is the time, and I that song blew me away. I played that one to death, and that's not a song that anybody even talks about when they talk about the album. You know,
that was a single in the UK.
Oh, was it? Okay, all right. That's interesting. So RSO chopped you off and said, that's it. Contracts null and void.
Yeah.
We've canceled the US tickets.
Yeah.
What do you guys do at this point? Are you still playing?
Well, we get completely into the band, and we start writing songs with Bob. We do another tour in Europe, in Hamburg, and we're a good live band by this time. But when we get back from that tour, the manager tells us all the money from the advance has been spent. And so we don't have a record contract and we don't have any money.
Was it?
Laugh about it now, you know. But.
That's it, yeah. I did read somewhere, I don't know where I read it, but I read somewhere that you were playing somewhere and a record person brought a young Scottish band to see you guys that turned out to be U2.
No, that's when we were in London. We played the Rock Garden in London.
All right.
And this is before we'd gone out on a big tour, but we were reasonably respectable on stage at that point. Played the Rock Garden, and RSO, you know, they used to get tapes. The A&R guys used to get tapes sent in all the time. Anyway, one day they handed Lou and I this tape and said, "Can you listen to that? Because it's a band," and you know they want to. They're looking for a record contract. Well, of course, Lou and I didn't listen to it. but then he said, "Do you mind if these guys come down because they like your music? Can they come down to the Rock Garden?" We were, "Yeah, sure." So we played, and there's these 4 guys standing right in front of us at the front of the stage the whole night, and it was U2.
I love stories like that. And I wherever I read it, I was reading that Lou was showing the Edge the chords to some new songs you were working on, and I just thought that was a blast.
I think you read it in the liner notes to the Lost Album.
Oh, was that where I read it?
Yeah.
What album is that? Well, my friends we'll just talk about it real quick, but the Headboys, after their debut album and after they were cut loose, they had a lot of tracks essentially finished for album number 2 that never saw the light of day. And George and I, through our friendship over the years with my record label Pop Detective, he said, I got this stuff. I started questioning, and we released what we called the Lost Album, which is the second album that should have come from the Headboys. And it's on Pop Detective Records. And it's just was one of my favorite projects I've ever done. And the music is classic Headboys. It's just wonderful. And if you're looking for it, it's at cdbaby.com. You can always get it from there, or Amazon, or all the usual places. But so
well,
you had
here, Mark, that you did an amazing job there.
Oh, thank you.
Because you put everything into that, and and I was very proud of the work that we did. I like the music on that album. These songs needed to go out somewhere. You also got fantastic artwork done by Frank Laudo.
Yeah, Frank Laudo.
Frank on Instagram these days, and he's a great guy.
He's a heck of a talented graphic artist, and I had this vision of that album cover and doing it that way, which not only promoted Pop Detective Records, but I thought it was really cool to put Davey's picture in the corner and have the remaining members of the band just kind of perusing a record shop, like what are they doing there? They're looking for the lost album, and I'm very proud of the way it turned out, and I'm happy that we got all that music out for people to hear, because thanks for releasing that disc. The Headboys are hugely important. A Facebook person just wrote to us, so that's kind of neat, and it was my absolute pleasure. But it was just neat that you had all this material ready to roll, and then it, things changed, like you said. The music was different. And did you all kind of go your separate ways then? Who stayed in music, who didn't? Where did you go?
We all went our separate ways. I went and spent the rest of my life became a creative director in advertising. Lou went back to, I have to say, Lou is just the best. He's a great person, and he's a brilliant guitarist. But he just went back to Dundee because that was his home, and played in pub bands. And I think it was the same for all of us. I never, ever wanted to play with anyone else other than those three guys. That was it for me.
Look who just came back. David Pop.
Hey, George, it turns out that in that other room, the Wi-Fi just doesn't work well.
Yeah.
But now I'm trying to figure out how I'm like another guest that we had. I can't center myself.
Well, we were just talking about what happened to the Headboys after RSO cut them off, and everything just kind of went south. And we had actually the Facebook user said, thanks for releasing the Lost album. It was hugely important. That was Ronnie Barnett of the Muffs. It doesn't say his name on there, but it was a great comment. Thank you, Ronnie. We appreciate it. And you got, so again, George, you got into teaching?
I went into advertising.
Advertising.
Creative stuff. It's just what I've always done. And I kept, because I went to art college, I kept painting. And so that's what I do now is I'm an artist, and I teach painting.
And quite a good one. I wanted to, in case anybody loves collectibles from the music industry, and you would like something from a wonderful artist named George Boyter, who was in the Headboys, GeorgeBoyterArtist.com. You can see his work, and it's available for purchase. It's wonderful, wonderful work, and I'm quite impressed, George. So if anybody wants to check it out, GeorgeBoyterArtist.com, please do. And that's our special guest tonight from the Headboys. I know, George, you've got some things laying around you from the Headboys memorabilia-wise that I'm absolutely fascinated to see. What do you got going on?
Well, when we didn't have access to a studio, we were still writing, and so we recorded some tracks in a famous studio in London called Sarm Studios. It was just a little studio, but it had a good feel to it, and we recorded some stuff in there. But we recorded some stuff that only went on a cassette here, and in, I think it was Bob Heatley's garage. And let me just, so these songs, I can't play them. I found the cassettes, and I'll just tell you a little bit, if I can remember anything about them right now. If I can find my glasses, then I'll be able to read this.
I'd give you mine because I'm the same way.
We got some tracks here that I know are all written and sung and everything, arranged. Hunger, Perfume Garden, Giving It Up, Renegade, Man Is Me, Temptation, Please Stay, and a song that I remember really well that we finished up to master status, No Man's Land. And I there's no way I can listen to these, because if I play this on a machine, that's it, they're destroyed. And there's
and we talked briefly about that. And when the time comes to put that to digital, got to handle that with kid gloves. Yes.
Well, listen, you inspired me, Mark, the other day when you got in touch and you asked about the masters, because you said there's still some people out there interested in Headboys music. So I did something that I haven't done for 30 years. I phoned up Callum.
Okay.
Wow.
And that must have given him a bit of a shock, because he was walking his dog along the beach or something. And we got on great. And I said, that you talked about there was a level of interest and people still want to get that first album on CD. And I said, but as I understand it, Callum, the tapes were destroyed. For 30 years, I've thought the master tapes were lost. And he said, no, I've got a 1/4-inch mixdown master tape.
Wow, great.
I can believe it. He can't play it. He said, what you've got to do is you've got to get it baked.
Baked, yep.
You get the music off, and then you can reproduce it. So if there is sufficient interest, we can do it. And not only that, whatever we do, we should put a whole lot of this, these demos. They're all Boyter, Lewis compositions.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first on Material Issues. The 1/4-inch master exists. We've got extra tracks almost finished to master status that exist. We'll see what the future brings. So that's why people got to stay tuned into Material Issues. It's moments like this where it is a wow moment. And thank you for that, George. That is fantastic news. Holy cow. Holy cow.
You started it, Mark, and I just completed it. So, we could do a whole lot of bonus tracks. We could do another album of bonus tracks.
Oh my gosh. That's very exciting news. That's really neat. Well, thank Callum from the bottom of our hearts, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we can make something happen in the future, because I know there have been Headboys fans out there that from time to time they keep dropping me messages and saying, well, why not the first album? Why don't we, and it's not as simple as just, let's just release it. So we're going to work in those directions.
George, what were some of the most memorable shows you ever did as the Headboys? Who were some of the acts you supported, or who supported you?
I think the best gigs were when we weren't supporting. We did a great gig in Amsterdam. I think the crowd, were completely gone in the head, but they were brilliant. And we just got such a buzz from it. I think we played well. That was probably our best ever gig. I can remember we did one in Hamburg and we did one in Munich, and they were stormers. I can also remember we did one in, where was it? Yeah, we did one in Berlin. And I don't remember the gig at all, because I was really ill afterwards and taken to hospital with some mystery illness.
Oh.
Not due to any substance abuse whatsoever, because I never did any of that. I was just, and you're Scottish, you don't need drugs. You're mad enough. And so the whole band went off. They flew off to Hamburg, which was the next gig, the next night. And I was left in a hospital in Berlin, where a German doctor gave me an injection and it paralyzed me.
Wow.
I was completely paralyzed in a foreign hospital. Anyway, the paralysis wore off because I was just left alone. And somehow or other, I can't remember how it happened now, I managed to get on a plane, arrive in Hamburg, get a cab to the gig, and play the gig.
Wow.
So I think Hamburg was good. Berlin, who cares?
Now it's Hamburg's famous for two things now.
That's awesome, though.
The road is crazy. You know, it's crazy enough without getting yourself wasted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed.
Well, who are some of the your favorite bands that you got to play with?
Oh yeah. Well, we played with a mad guy called John Otway. Do you remember John Otway?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
We did our first tour with John Otway, and that told us a lot. Yeah, gave us a lot of knowledge about what you've got to do when you're on stage to keep the audience with you. You know, he'd go to any length. You know, you climb the rafters and things. You've got to project, and give the audience. You've got to give to the audience, and not stand there thinking you're being judged by the audience. That was a big revelation to me.
Yeah. That's
other
good.
bands, we're really glad to say that we played the Cavern once.
Yes.
We played the Marquee Club in London, which is now closed.
Right.
And way back in my folky days, I played Les Cousins, which is a legendary club in Greek Street in Soho in London. I played that with my friend Andrew, and we were support to John Martin, who's was a fantastic musician, and we were just a couple of schoolboys, you know. But John let us open for him. So there's three legendary places. I'm really proud to say I played them all.
I don't know if you know this, George, but I run a music festival.
Yeah.
Where we showcase unsigned bands, and one of the venues in which we do it's the Cavern Club. We've done it there for 18. We had done it there for 18 straight years until the pandemic, and we'll be back again in 2022. But every time I walk down those cavern steps, to quote a famous song, it feels like the first time, and it's surreal and it's amazing.
We played there with the Skids, who were a Scottish band.
Oh, okay, there you go.
And they're a brilliant band. We loved them, especially guitarist Stuart Adamson.
So what David is trying to say is, if we can make some progress with some remasters and things, it would be great to have the Headboys reunite at the Cavern Club.
David's trying to say, yeah.
David
would love that.
Could you imagine? You guys are all still musicians, and he keeps it to 20-minute sets. So just 30-minute sets. Come out and do the best 6 songs, and the place would go bananas.
We've done it. We've had bands reunite and play.
There we go.
Yeah.
Andy's saying, "Oh yes." That's awesome.
Not to put you on the spot, of course.
I know.
Just so you know, it would be an honor. That's all.
George, do you have anything else next to Headboys related you'd like to show me, memorabilia wise? I know we were talking in the past.
Let's see.
You had some.
This used to go in the drums.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's a drum Headboys.
Yeah.
I've got the original release, which came with a booklet. I don't know if
wow.
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever see one of these?
No.
Everything in it is a face or a head. Yeah.
I get it, yeah. Now, that's awesome.
All this stuff's been in boxes for...
Yeah.
Done about 6 or 7 house moves. Anyway, that was part of the original.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, when you did release Something's Happening on Polydor in Germany, and that's
wow, that's a real anorak thing to know.
I can't find that single for a decent price at all anywhere.
I can tell you, it's not worth getting.
It's not worth
We recorded at because this was after we'd split with Callum, so Bob is playing on that. But we were at that place in Wales. It's quite a well-known studio, and we were given a producer who didn't get our music at all, and he asked us to change the time signature, and you know, we had to rework the song, and what else was it? Yeah, he put some phasing on it that when I can't listen to it anymore because it sounds like it's just going in and out of tune. And the version that we did at SARM, which is on the Lost album,
Right.
that's the best version we ever played. It's fantastic, that version. I love that track.
And what was the B-side to that on Polyder? Do you remember?
What a question.
I don't know if I wrote that down anywhere.
The Writings on the Wall.
Yes, the writings on the wall. Yep.
Yeah, and I've got that. I've got Writing on the Wall in demo version here. Yeah, on this one here.
All right.
Oh, nice.
Writing on the Wall, along with something called "Giving It Up for You," Waverley Steps, Living in London, and there's even one called "Deadline." These are songs that I can't remember.
So this will be a learning experience for you too.
Yeah.
I don't know if this question was asked while I was off air, but do you remember your Top of the Pops experience? Was it a good one?
I think it was good I think Lou was really good on it. If I see it now, I'm embarrassed at prancing around, you know. As you are, who wouldn't be? But in this country here, you know, Top of the Pops was always such a big thing. You're never able to live it down the whole of the rest of your life. It's just like, they'll say, and you were on Top of the Pops, and it was just one night, you know.
Yeah,
but yeah, it was good. Good to
but it lives on YouTube now for as digitally long as it ever will. And yeah, I mean, I get it. Lou looked very edgy and kind of cool, the dark glasses and all that kind of stuff. And 70% of the video was him, and then there'd be you'd pop up with little background vocal harmony.
You did look happy though, George.
He did look happy.
You know, rightly so. Lou had star quality. The funny thing is that in real life, Lou is he's quite an introverted, really mild-mannered person, and those dark glasses Lou never played by looking at the fretboard on his guitar. He played by feel because his eyesight was so bad. Really, that was dark glasses, a bit like Roy Orbison. You know, he had to have dark glasses because his eyesight was not good. Yeah, I know, but people kind of they look at how a person looks and extrapolate from that as to what kind of person they are.
Yeah, sure.
But Lou's a real sweetie. And
I'll tell you what, you know, when David was off air, we talked briefly about the Lost album that I put out, and of course, right here where my finger is, down in the corner, we've got a little tribute to the drummer of the Headboys who passed away. It's Davey, and he looks like
Mickey Dillon.
He just looks like the warmest, most fun-loving kind of guy. Yeah. Now there you talk about, you know, what visually looks like, but he looked like just a heck of a guy. So
Davey was. You know,
that was our little tribute to a member of the Headboys that's no longer with us. So
that was such a nice thing to do, and Dave was kind of the heart of the band. You know, he was just such a generous person, and we'll miss him.
Yeah, very much so, and that's why it was neat to put something like that out on CD that people could have, and that's one of the reasons why I just was so proud to do it, and hopefully hopefully in the very near future, we've got
I
some.
really appreciate what you did for us.
Yeah,
Really.
no, it was my absolute pleasure. But George, we're coming to the end of our hour here.
Okay.
We've covered quite a lot of stuff. We have had some revelations on the master tapes located with Callum, which is just fantastic.
News. Yeah.
That's amazing news. We've got a whole bunch of cassettes that need baked with the unreleased material. Also amazing news. I don't know what else you could tell us that's going to make our head spins, but you're playing with some things in your hands right there.
Yeah. I've got some really embarrassing early photographs. I was in front of the headmaster's office.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I love it. I love it.
I think this is where the Headboys came from. This is Callum feeding his schoolgirl.
Wasn't there a photo where the schoolgirl is bending over somewhere? And I don't mean that. I don't mean that in any disrespectful way to any ladies watching. But
memory.
Yeah. Hey, the Headboys meant a lot to me in 1979. You know.
Yeah. All right. Here's one. This is just my one. So this is a guess who.
Oh, that's Stills.
Kevin's. Oh yeah, Stephen Stills. Yeah,
Stephen Stills. Yeah.
I was gonna say Kevin Spacey, but no.
I'd like to say I'd been jamming with him, but in fact, I'd just gone round to the stage door after the concert.
But you were stalking him. Yeah. Well, George, it was a pleasure whenever I met you in New York. We had a wonderful time talking about the project and everything.
Yeah.
And I hope we get to do that again soon. And of course, David will be in Liverpool in 2022 at the Cavern Club. So, if there's a Headboys reunion, great. With no pressure whatsoever. But I'm sure David would love to see you come down to the Cavern and say hi as he welcomes.
I would love to meet you.
Tons of bands from all over the world.
I'm sorry I was MIA for half of the show, but it just kept cutting out in the other room. I should have done it in here. Now I know better for next week at least.
Okay.
Well, George, we're gonna stay in touch, obviously, over a lot of things that we have been talking about for years. God bless you, my friend. Stay happy, stay healthy, and we will be in touch soon. Thank you so much for joining us here.
Definitely, thank you very much
on Material Issues. It was an absolute pleasure. And George, we're going to put you back out of here while David and I wrap it up. Have a great evening. We'll talk to you soon, my friend. God bless.
Bye-bye.
Well, David, there you go. Episode 27 of Material Issues is in the bag. I know you had a little bit of technical difficulties there, but we were glad you popped back on. We've got Andy saying great stuff. Thank you, Andy. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Andy, as always.
That was some great news from George and Callum, who he phoned up after all the years, and the master tapes still exist.
So now the question is, what's the next step?
Well, the next step is working towards what we can do with the master tapes, and obviously, if we can get permission. Either through me or through some help with some friends of ours that have some connections with certain other reissue entities and things. It doesn't have to be on Pop Detective. I'd be happy just to get this out on a label that would be willing to do it if we can play ball with Universal and the powers that be. So there's a lot of things that have to be looked into. Obviously, baking the cassette tapes of all the unreleased material is utmost important to save all that digitally, which everybody who knows, I know Dave Bradley from the Klaatu fan club, he's got experience in baking, and we may even talk to Jamie Vernon about that in the next couple of weeks. But it's a delicate process, and that's how you save those things to digital. But you only get one shot at it. And you need to, put it in the hands of somebody that knows what they're doing, because otherwise it's gone to the ages. Just like most of RCA Victor's masters that have been bulldozed into the river over here in Camden, never to be seen again. But David, we got some great things coming up in the next couple of weeks. Next week, Tony Poole.
Yes, Tony Poole of the great UK band Starry-Eyed and Laughing, who had two amazingly Birds-inspired albums in the '70s. But on and off, they've been recording and releasing stuff. And in fact, they just released an album a few months ago, and it's very clear that they've still got it. So anybody who's a Birds fan, and if you don't know Starry-Eyed and Laughing, just think of them as the UK Birds with kind of a '70s production value. And yeah, you've got it. And we're very glad to have Tony as our guest next week. And then following week, December 1st, we have none other than the head honcho of Bullseye Recordings and just auteur of the Canadian Pop Music Encyclopedia and artist himself in so many different bands like Moving Targets and Mr. Murray. Just an all-around great guy. Mr. Jamie Vernon will be our guest.
I've known Jamie for forever, and we've got some great stories on how we even met, but he's one of my favorite people in the world. So I'm looking forward to that. That's wonderful. That's wonderful news.
Yeah, it really
and then we roll into the heart of December, where we've got some irons in the fire, as they say. So if you want to know what's going on, make sure you go to the Facebook group Material Issues and you join the group, because then you'll be notified who's coming up and what's going on. Or you can go to materialissues.com, which takes you over to the YouTube archive, and you can join that YouTube group as well. And both of them will notify you of our guests coming up. But again, another great show tonight, David, for show number 27. And I had a blast. I hope you did too. I hope everybody watching did.
I certainly enjoyed the part I could actually see.
It's all good, my friend. You're too much of right now. You're in the heart of traveling around. You got IPO Boston coming up this weekend. So anybody
tomorrow, yeah. Dave and I will be driving up there tomorrow morning, and it's at a club called Flying Embers, which has been around as a brewery for quite a while, and now it's become a brew pub / venue. And we're actually going to be their first big event there, so we're honored, and it's going to be I think it's going to be a really good time. And then the following weekend, Thursday through Saturday, we'll be in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, home of Dave Rave, and we'll be doing IPO at the Casbah, which is a very happening venue there, and we're really glad to be there, and it'll be fun. And then back home, and then we'll see what happens for next year. Cool. As you mentioned, irons in the fire. So far, Chicago and Liverpool are scheduled, but we'll be sure to add a lot more.
Yeah, indeed. Well, David, once again, thank you so much. Hope you continue to feel great. We're always thinking about you, my friend, and we will catch you and everybody else next Wednesday here on Material Issues. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Cheers.